Michael Suffredini, President and CEO of Axiom Space.
Thank you, Bettina. Good afternoon. To say that we're excited is a huge understatement. It's fantastic to have launched this morning. The crew is on orbit. They're very excited, happy, and I talked to them yesterday. If we'd have kept them in quarantine much longer, there would have been a revolt. So we're very excited to have them on orbit, as they are, I'm sure. So we're looking forward to docking tomorrow to be 7:45 Eastern Time, and once they get to orbit and dock with the crew, they're very excited to be getting together with the ISS crew on orbit. So everybody's looking forward to that. I want to take this moment, though. Those of you that haven't watched this closely, we've been working on this together with NASA and SpaceX something like 6 years. This is the first mission really in our effort to build a commercial space station. This is one of 4 or 5 precursor missions before we launch our first module to the ISS in 2024. And so a special thanks to both NASA for persevering with us and helping us get to this point, and of course to our SpaceX friends who put us in orbit today, and we look forward to bringing us home tomorrow, and we've got several other trips planned with them. So thank you all very much. Bettina.
Thank you so much. Next, we will hear from Kathy Lueders, NASA Associate Administrator for Space Operations.
Wow, it was a beautiful, beautiful launch. You know, I always hold my breath until the second stage engine lights, and then it's so great to hear, you know, the vehicle's on orbit and everything's going, and it never gets old. It never gets old. I'm hoping to see a ton more of these. But, you know, the team really accomplished what was an important first step with this mission, with, you know, and thank you, SpaceX, for successfully, you know, accomplishing that beautiful launch. But like Mike talked about, I really want to acknowledge the million, I would say maybe billion, maybe I hear 6 years, billion steps that have been made by this joint Axiom NASA SpaceX team, as we've really been working through how to really make this first fully private astronaut mission to the ISS work, right? The space station's a busy place, and Dana will talk about, you know, the important work that's going on with our government astronauts. And we've learned a ton getting to this point, and I promise you we'll keep learning. But this is really important for us. It's important for us to do this right. You know, as the administrator said this morning, we are at an inflection point. And ISS is strong for the next 8 years. You know, we're going to see some amazing, like Robin Gattens talks about, this is going to be the decade of results. But we are working to a future where NASA will be buying services on a commercial LEO destination. And so it is very important that we continue to learn, that we continue to carefully step through the rest of this mission. But man, was this launch a great start. And I am so looking forward to seeing our ISS crew welcome the Axiom crew tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Next, we'll hear from NASA's Deputy Program Manager for the International Space Station, Dana Weigel.
First of all, thank you all for tuning in. As Kathy said, it was an absolutely beautiful and picture-perfect launch, just fantastic to see. It's a great start for this historic mission. Our whole team and the crew on board, who we spoke to last week, is really excited and looking forward to the arrival of the Axiom crew. I know you've heard us say it, but this is a really, really big milestone for us in our overall campaign to try to help foster a commercial low Earth orbit economy and really build new partnerships, you know, learn how to work with each other in new ways. So this is a great first step in the execution of the vision that we've had for a while. Let's see, as Mike said, docking 7:45 a.m. Eastern Time. Hatch opening should be around 9:30 Eastern Time, so a little bit after that. And then after that, we will have a welcome ceremony, as is customary with our crew, so you'll get to see the entire crew if you tune in for that. The Axiom crew will be on board for about 8 days before they come home. We have a really busy spring time frame here. If you tuned in yesterday, you probably heard a lot of the activities that were going on board ISS, but just to point out a couple things, we've got Crew 4 coming up right on the heels of the Axiom 1 mission. We're going to do a handover between Crew 4 and Crew 3, and then Crew 3 will return. So we've got a big stack up and a lot of activity. And then all of that leads into our Boeing OFT-2 mission in May, which is a really critical milestone for us. We have a lot of operations between the Axiom crew and our crew that we'll be doing during the mission. For us, this is a little bit more like a shuttle mission in that we had to kind of pre-plan everything together to make sure that all the activities kind of aligned together and that we could do all of this in such a compressed time frame. The teams are ready to go. Everyone's really excited that we're off and running today and looking forward to docking tomorrow. So thank you very much, and I will hand it back to Bettina.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll hear from NASA's Commercial LEO Program Manager, Angela Hart.
I want to thank everybody again for being here. What an incredible day. I hope you can hear the smile on my face and the excitement in my voice, because it was really tremendous for all of us to be part of this today and witness the successful launch. On behalf of our program, I couldn't be more excited to see this successful launch, and as many have already said, a first step in completing this milestone and the goals that we are envisioning for commercialization of low Earth orbit. We look forward to seeing the safe arrival of the AS-1 crew and really watching them execute a very packed schedule of mission objectives that is very important, again, to our commercialization plans and efforts, as well as Axiom's. I know the world is watching this historic event. The science, commercial activities, and outreach that they have planned for this mission, I expect to inspire the next generation and as well inspire our current and new industry partners as we, build this commercial LEO economy. So again, thank you, Bettina, and really excited to be here and can't wait for the next step.
Thank you, Angela. And now we'll hear from Senior Director for Human Spaceflight Programs at SpaceX, Benji Reed.
Great. Thank you, Bettina. Again, honored to be here and to be here with these great partners. I was mentioning just before we started that we could sit around here at the table with a lot of folks we've been able to work with for years, certainly my whole tenure at SpaceX, and that's an honor. But let's first jump to the where the crew's at right now in Dragon. Dragon is healthy. We've accomplished a number of, or we've started working through our nominal burns. The crew have doffed their suits. They've taken their suits off, and they're starting in on their first space meal. So it's pretty exciting. So I think people are healthy and well, and Dragon looks great. We had good insertion on the orbit, and we're working towards getting these folks to space station. Other than that, this is fundamentally again a partnership with all of us as we work together, as was mentioned before, to get Axiom through this great mission where they're doing a lot of science and research, and then get them back home safely. And of course, we have another crew coming up for NASA that we're looking forward to carrying, and then another one coming home shortly after that. All right.
Thank you so much, Benji. Next, now we'll take questions from reporters. If you have a question, please press *1. And remember, when you open up the line, please state your name, affiliation, and to whom you'd like to direct your questions. We'll start our first question from Chris Davenport.
Oh, hi, thanks, and congrats, everyone. I guess this is for Benji. This is SpaceX's, I think it's your 6th crewed flight, and it's kind of getting to the point where, at least from the outside, it's starting to feel routine. There's a celebratory atmosphere and a lot of excitement. But I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you guard against complacency as you hit this high cadence and obviously have another crewed flight coming up this month. Thanks.
Hi, Chris. Good question. You used 2 words there that I think we should really caution, routine and complacency. It is not routine. In fact, one of my colleagues was saying every time we do one of these crew launches, he feels like it takes a few years off of his life. It's that serious, and we have to take this. We've called it a sacred responsibility before, and it is. Every single launch matters in general for all of our customers, and every time we have people on board matters even more.
And so we take that seriously. All of the teams understand that. We remind ourselves of that, remind each other of that. And we walk through the steps each time, and we look at what did we do well, what can be improved, and we take efforts to make sure everybody is well trained and well aware of the right things to do each time and how we're improving those steps. It's so much of it's about awareness, and it's definitely about fighting that complacency. Everything matters every single time.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Marcia Dunn. Marcia?
Yes, hi. A question for Dana. I know Crew 4 is coming up fast. I've seen April 21st, maybe the 23rd. Which are you leaning toward? And how long can Crew 3 stay up there before they have to come home? And, you know, there would be no American on board if you don't have this handover. So I guess this is really crucial for the handover. And what would happen if you didn't have the handover? Would the 3 Russians be able to operate things until someone got up there from NASA?
Let's see, Marcia, I will do my best to remember all 5 of those questions. Let's see. You know, as I think you heard yesterday, we have a really tight schedule. You know, I mentioned the Boeing OFT-2 mission, 3rd week of May. You know, that's really important. And so if I back up from that, there's a lot of activity that we're all trying to work together to accomplish between now and then, including, as you pointed out, the Crew 4 and Crew 3 handover, which is important to us. You know, we are able to do indirect crew handover, but it's a lot less efficient for us. We end up spending a lot of time from the ground working with the crew to kind of help supplement for handover. So anytime we can, we really want to have the crew on board who's got all the direct experience handing over to the crew. So that indeed is our plan. We're looking at doing a 5-day handover there. Backing up, let's see, you asked about Crew 4 launch. We're still working to a 4/21. There's a really aggressive schedule, and I think Benji can share with you some of their highlights about the road to and what it takes to get from turning around from an Axiom launch to the Crew 4 launch. So that's a really critical timeline for them. One of the other keys is we have to keep options on the table and be flexible when we're dealing with weather, both for launching vehicles and bringing vehicles home. And so there's a lot of work that goes on between now and all those kind of final decisions and plans to really make sure we've got the right opportunities and right windows. There are other things on board Station 2 that we have to work around. We've got a Russian EVA, for example, and so all of that's factored into all the decisions. I think you asked, I'll let Benji talk about the vehicle itself in terms of number of days that the spacecraft could stay on orbit from a station standpoint. I think that's a different answer. I'm not sure if you were asking about the vehicle or about the actual crew duration. But let me answer the Russian onboard question. Since you asked how much could we do without our crew on board, I'll answer that and then I'll hand it off. But you know, really, the USOS, so our segment, which also includes the JAXA, the Japanese element, and the European element, our crew is really trained to manage and maintain the U.S. part of the segment. And so the Russian crew is really trained to operate their part of the segment. So although the crews help each other out, they're really specialists kind of in their own area. So it is important for us to have crew on board on our side.
But I think Crew 3 is good to the end of May, Marcia. So our plan is to obviously get this vehicle up. Then we're going to be looking at whether to get the Axiom vehicle down. Benji and the team are working really hard to hold vehicle readiness to April 21st. As you get the vehicles ready, and then you hope the weather god starts smiling at you. That's how this works, right? And so we're going to have all the vehicles ready, working through all the things, and then really I think we'll have to be letting you know over this next week kind of the final planning for re-entry of the Axiom vehicle and landing, and then our planning for launch of Crew 4. But our goal is to have Crew 4 launch by the end of April, and then have Crew 3 down by mid-May to be ready for OFT2. and the vehicle won't time out like we talked about, Marsha. The vehicle won't time out to the end of May. Okay. Anything else, Benji, you want to add? Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Richard Tribeau.
Hi, thanks. With the Orlando Sentinel, appreciate it. This is for Dana and Kathy. With Boeing Starliner coming on board and private missions such as this, my question is, how many per year trips from the various spacecraft could make it rotate to the International Space Station? Is it giving you guys a juggling headache for the future? And how many can actually be attached to the space station at any one time? And that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the goal, we have the 2 docking ports for us to be able to, and Dana and the team do a great job of kind of managing the traffic. This is, for us, this is kind of a great problem to have, and we've been working on it, like we've talked about, we've been working on it for 5 to 6 years, and so already the team, we need to have 2 increment crew flights, obviously, to make sure that we've got a vehicle up and a lifeboat for the crew members that the vehicle took up, always docked on orbit. And so what that does is that leaves another docking port then free for cargo missions and these Axiom missions for us to be able to use. So, this is one of the things that we've been preparing for really hard, and it's one of the things we keep talking and asking Seth, when are you going to get that port up there with a few extra docking ports for us, right? But like I said, I think this is one of those good problems that we've been wanting to have for a while, and it's good to see us staring in the face. So we're aiming for, potential for 2 private astronaut missions a year, but we're going to learn. We've learned a lot from working this one in, and we'll learn more going forward on how to make it more efficient, just like we did with the cargo and the crew missions.
Thank you. Next question comes from Chelsea Goad.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. Chelsea Goad with Space.com. So yesterday, during the pre-launch briefing, it was mentioned that Mike is kind of the ace card for Ax-1. With Peggy leading Ax-2, do you see all crewed missions in the immediate future having a veteran astronaut guiding the rest of the crew through the mission? And do you see this changing over time?
Chelsea, thank you for the question. We think it's critically important that there's always a professional astronaut flying to station. Peggy and Mike, of course, have been the ISS before and commanded, and so they're great for these first 2 missions. We look at each of the crews as we go forward. We do train crews as professional astronauts, so we do have the option to have the professional astronaut also be a paying customer. For the first couple of flights or so, it'll be an Axiom astronaut who will have commanded the ISS, and we do think that's the right way to fly these flights.
Thank you. Next question from Marcia Smith.
Thanks so much. Mine's a bit of a different question. I think it was Kathy who mentioned that the crew was going to revolt if they had to stay in quarantine any longer. And I'm actually curious, who determines the length of the quarantine and the conditions of it? Is it NASA or Axiom or whatever company it is that's flying the private astronaut? And is it different because of COVID? I mean, can they be there in quarantine for a shorter period of time if we ever get through COVID? And what did they do for all the time they were in there?
Okay, so quarantine is sort of an agreed to time period that the International Space Station program countries determined was the right period of time. It's actually extended a little bit over the last few years. So 14 days is really what they require, and that's the right thing because we're coming up to their space station, and we need to make sure our crew is in the same health condition as the rest of the crew. So we're happy to do that. What happens, though, is once you get to the 14-day clock, if you assume that everything's going to work out, you have to pull the trigger and send the crew into quarantine. when they go into quarantine, they stay. They're not running around, having dinner or going out and doing drinks and things like that or whatever they like to do. They really have to stay isolated. And as such, once vehicles start slipping, especially if they slipped a day here, 2 days there, the crew just stays in quarantine because you can't take them out because you'll violate the 14 days. So this is what happens. It's not uncommon. Quarantine used to be a little shorter, and so it wasn't quite as obvious. But when you get to 14 days, and then you start working on 18 days, and then it starts looking like it's going to be 21 if you have slips and weather, you start to get a little nervous how long you're going to be isolated this way. But the crew is well taken care of. We have a wonderful facility that we use. It's a very large facility. It has all the accommodations. It has gym and pool and a place for everybody to work quietly to do what they want, and a number of features like this. And then they have a team around them that's providing them the dinners and the food they want, and taking care of their medical care and any needs they have. So it's we take really good care of them. But as you imagine, like COVID, just being pent up in your house for a while, you know how that feels. And I was kind of kidding. They were happy to be leaving, but if we slipped another day or two, they would have happily waited because they were really looking forward to the flight.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Micah Maidenberg.
Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. I think this is maybe for Angela and Mike. Could you talk about one sort of instance where Axiom and NASA actually disagreed about something with regards to the mission and how you sort of resolved it? And if you could be as specific as possible, that would be great. I know I just asked this question because it was discussed, about how everyone is learning to work together. Thank you.
So what I would say is there's lots of ideas of things folks want to do on orbit. We worked really hard with Axiom to put together an acceptable list of activities that can be conducted on orbit. I think that we worked through pretty much everything and been able to accommodate, all their requests. Sometimes, when a request comes in, we have to work with the station program because, the actual implementation of that request may end up having to be a little bit different than exactly how it was requested. Axiom's being quite aggressive, and the folks going up there really want to accomplish a lot of work while they're up there, and so we've had to work through all that. We're really excited to see all of the activities they're doing. They're doing over 24 science experiments. They have probably about the same number of commercial activities, and many into the over 50 hours of video media outreach activities. And so it was just a large amount of items to go through. So I wouldn't say it was so much disagreements, but working through the details and how to make sure that was accomplished on station without impacting ISS operations, and honestly working within the NASA policies associated with what we can and can't do on ISS. And I don't know if Mike wants to add anything.
Yeah, so, this is, I wouldn't say that, well, let's just back up. We're both trying to accomplish the same objective. And so it really is, when you get into a room together to work through challenges, it's not like either of us can walk away. We're in it to solve the problem because we're trying to create this commercial economy in low Earth orbit. And so a good example is, as you know, NASA being a national asset, and the crew members on orbit are government employees, commercializing anything is kind of hard. So we as a company, of course, would like to do sponsorship activities where you promote a vendor. Somebody comes to us and says, hey, we want you to promote this product on orbit. Well, that's very hard to do in a I'll call it a government facility. There's rules against that because that asset is really owned by the government, which means everybody helped pay for it, and you can't really show favoritism that way. So that's one of those things that we had to work through very carefully And you heard Angela talk about every single one of those had to be worked through, which is, challenging for us and challenging for NASA, but that's what we did. We worked through it together. So that's the way I'd couch it. It's hard because we're trying to do what we need to do commercially, and NASA is trying to accommodate that within the policies and laws that they have to work within.
And I just want to clarify, I made the comment that they have a very aggressive schedule. I would say ambitious. And we're really excited about all the activities they're planning to do. And I think it's going to, I'm really expecting a boon from industry once they see a lot of the things that we were able to accomplish and what they are planning to do. And as Mike said, I think we came up with really great solutions for all of the areas that we had to work through hard. And I really think they're going to have a really successful mission and do some things that we haven't seen before. So excited for all that.
Thank you. As a reminder, if you have a question, if you're a reporter that has a question, please press *1. Please press *1 to ask your question. Our next reporter is Kenneth Chang with the New York Times.
Hi, thank you. This is, I believe, for Dana and Derek. I was wondering, is there any way to describe what a typical day for one of the Axiom astronauts will be on station? Is their sleeping and eating schedules going to be aligned with the other crew members, or is it going to be staggered so that they're not overlapping with everyone else? And can you give me some breakdown of what fraction of time will be on research, what fraction of time will be other activities, and how much time they have for themselves? Thank you.
Well, let's see, when they first get on board, their first about day and a half actually looks pretty similar to what we do with our crew. As you can imagine, safety of the crew and their awareness of where to find the emergency equipment and how to respond for different scenarios is really important. And so shortly after they dock, they'll spend time kind of going through some of those critical items, and then they go through a period of handover where they get familiarized with the actual equipment on board, the toilet, the food preparation area, things that they will need for daily living and kind of life on board. So that actually looks pretty similar to what our crews do for the first day and a half. And then after that, they kind of have a mix of different activities. The schedules, because we have so many people on board, the teams do their best job to kind of make sure that, for example, if the Axiom crew is using one of our payload facilities, which they are, that we don't schedule the NASA use of that facility. And so it's a very, it's more than a 1,000-piece puzzle, I'll put it that way, right, to fit all that together. We do like to have meal times align, and so we try to do that where we can. In fact, they are going to share a meal together, but sometimes the scheduling doesn't allow the overlap, and so the lunches kind of tend to be where we can fit them in, but then they're all off together kind of for dinner time and evening meals. Angela talked a little bit about what they're doing, but they've got, over 24 experiments, so they will be using a combination of different things on board. That's very similar to kind of how our crew is scheduled and planned. They'll also do a number of outreach and media-related events. They've got a lot of them in a very short time frame. Again, similar to what we do, though I'd say ours are probably a lot more spaced out.
And I'm not Derek, but, Dana said it all very well. Really, it's an integrated timeline. It's a short period of time. As Angela said, we have a very full timeline. So it's not quite as busy as shuttle flights were, but it is pretty darn busy. And then we want to make sure the timeline is integrated with crew, because you don't want us up banging around while the crew's trying to sleep and vice versa. So it's really good to get things aligned so that they're pretty much sleeping at the same time. They do want to eat together. Camaraderie on orbit's a big thing. And then there are pockets of time where the crews are off doing things that don't interfere with what's going on ISS, but it's planned. So the ISS guys know what they're doing, or at least that they don't have to provide any services at that time specifically to them. So it is an integrated plan, and they'll basically work together throughout the period.
Thank you. I know that one of my favorite little factoids I learned from the mission is this multinational crew represents 4 countries doing outreach in 5 languages. So it's pretty impressive, all the things that we're doing. Our next question will come from Lucy Alberg from AFP.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. For Mike, I was wondering, why are there no women among the crew members? Were there maybe less women candidates? Is it hard to find women candidates, and are you hoping to fly women on AX-2? Thank you.
Well, to answer your last question, the commander for AX-2 is a woman. So I can control that part. It's about customers that come to us and ask to fly. We'll fly, if they meet the qualifications to fly, then we certainly will fly them. We didn't have any female customers come to us for the first flight, and so that's why we ended up with the complement that we had. But as I said, our commander for AX-2 is a woman, so we'll look forward to that flight.
Peggy Whitson, an amazing astronaut. Our next question is from Zachary Albert.
Yes, thank you so much, Zachary Albert with the Launchpad News. Congratulations on a beautiful launch today. My question was wondering, what's the mission control and launch control like now working with NASA and SpaceX, but also we saw during the launch looking into Axiom Space's kind of control room. Who's handling what through this mission? What can we expect kind of each department to be handling? And what controls will Axiom Space have of the International Space Station while their crew's on board? Thank you.
So for Ascent, on orbit, on its way to ISS and return is all under SpaceX control. We are responsible for the crew, but the responsibility of the crew is within the bounds of what's required to safely operate the ship, and so we follow SpaceX's lead on that. When we get to the ISS, the big ISS is managed by the International Space Station program, and therefore we're under the auspices of the lead flight director and the commander on board, and our timeline is integrated into that. So when our guys are working things, we have direct access to the crew to help them work through the issues they have. But in solving their issues, if we have to do something different on ISS than we had planned, then we work that through the lead flight director, and they ultimately give us authority to do things we want to do. So that's how that's set up.
Thanks. If you have a question, if you're a reporter on the line, you can press *1 if you have a question. Our next question comes from Ray Bilal. I'm sorry, mispronouncing your name, WOFL TV. Ray, are you on the line?
Hi there, it's me. My question is, I know that we talk about experiments a lot, and just kind of in layman's term, want to explain to folks watching what the experiments are. If you could just kind of give us an idea of exactly what type of experiments are they doing and how that's going to benefit us here on Earth.
Well, I'd like to tell you that as CEO, I can tell you exactly what's going on with every experiment on this flight, but I'm not able to do that. I can tell you that there's stem cell and cancer-related research going on. There's aging research going on. We have self-assembly of structures experiment. We have actually there's another separate research on gene therapy to stop the growth of cancer. There is a demonstration for on-orbit cloud computing and AI this is the idea about what's called edge computing, where there's so much data trying to come down these days. People want to try to take the data, compute the solution, just send the solution down. So there's a demonstration for that. That's a handful of the specifics. And we've got some world-class entities working with us, which you may have heard, Mayo Clinic, the Cleveland Clinic, a couple of those others I can't mention, MIT, and the Montreal Children's Hospital. So this is a really, and the Ramon Foundation in Israel. So it's a pretty integrated effort with very, with really world-class institutions that are doing the research on orbit. And really everything that we're doing on orbit is leaning towards, it's not really basic research they're doing really doing research that leads to application, and that's the exciting part of this. We're slowly moving from fundamental research to applied research to creating a product that will benefit us on the ground. So that's exciting for us because the timeline to success, if your research works out, is pretty short.
Thank you. And you get more information on the research on axiomspace.com. There is a link to the press kit and gallery, and it has a lot of information. You could always reach us at media@axiomspace.com for more information. Our last question comes from Manuel Manzanati.
Hi, how are you? Manuel Masanti, covering the space program in Spanish. Congratulations on an incredible launch. I wonder, I'm fascinated by all the research that the crew is going to do in orbit and opening this market to other countries. I wonder if Axiom has already established contact with any country in Latin America or organization in Latin America for future missions. Thank you.
Yes, we have. Argentina and Brazil are the two that I know of. And really, those are countries that are talking to us about wanting to do research as opposed to also flying crews. And those are very early conversations, though. But the whole premise behind Axiom Space is we're a U.S. company serving a global market, and so we're very interested to fly experiments and research and manufacturing efforts from really any country around the world, and so we reach out as much as we can, but we also set ourselves up so people can come to us relatively easily as well.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. You can join us for the docking webcast, which begins Saturday tomorrow at 5:30 a.m. Eastern, roughly 2 hours in advance of the Ax-1 crew and SpaceX Dragon spacecraft docking with the International Space Station. As mentioned today, docking is at 7:45 Eastern, and hatch opening is at approximately 9:30 a.m., and you'll see the welcome ceremony. You can watch all of this on axiomspace.com and also on NASA TV. We encourage you to follow the mission, and on social media, follow it with the hashtag Ax-1. And if you are unable to get a question answered, please email us at media@axiomspace.com. Thank you so much, and go Ax-1.